Hello and welcome back. Today's episode 4 here for the Chatbox podcast with me, Ben Lister. Today's guest is broadcaster and radio presenter Alan Hyde, who does the BTCC stuff and used to work with Ian Collins, and he'll explain that in the interview. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you enjoyed the last few. So please like, subscribe and comment if you can, or dislike, whatever you want. I do not mind. But here's episode 4 with the legendary Alan Hyde. So hang on to your hats and enjoy the interview. BL out.
Hello and welcome everyone to another podcast. My name is Ben Lister. Welcome to the Chatterbox podcast. It will be here on SoundCloud straight after uploading later on in the day, but not Spotify. Apologies for that error. But before we start, I'd like to make a little tribute to Sir Murray Walker. I think he should have been a Sir personally, but it never happened. Murray, you were a broadcasting inspiration. You helped me get into broadcasting, and this one's for you. This podcast's for you, sir. And I know you'd want us to go on, go, like you always say. And here, thank you for talking us through Formula One over the years. Thank you. So let's crack on. In previous episodes, we travelled to Wivensey to meet poet Richard Harries, then drove back to Hull to meet Andy Yo-Yo, the nightclub promoter. Last time we spoke to my friend Paula Cayley, also in Hull, about her cancer journey, but today we have a broadcasting legend, a motorsport commentator, a radio presenter from TalkSport and BTCC commentary, and host of Tin Top Tuesday. And joining us from Hampshire, it's the legendary Alan Hyde. Hello, Alan.
Hi, Ben. What an intro. And to call me a broadcasting legend after you talk about the motorsport broadcasting legend, Murray Walker, is quite an honor and a very nice little tribute to Murray. I'm sure, like so many other people, couldn't quite believe, even though he was 96 years old, it still came as a big shock to read the news on Saturday that he'd passed away. And I read it. I don't know how you saw the news. It's one of those items of news that for us in motorsport, I think everyone will always remember where they were and what they were doing when they saw that Murray had passed away. But I read it, a tweet from Silverstone, from the managing director, Stuart Pringle, and it was a very nicely worded, very kind release that Stuart put out, that Silverstone put out. But I'm still coming to terms with it, really, because Murray was for us in motorsport, Ben, he was the broadcaster. He, growing up, he was what I listened to. He was the person that brought Formula One to people that didn't necessarily like Formula One or motorsport. He made it accessible, for example, to somebody like my mum, who had no interest in motor racing, but he was kind and welcoming and friendly, and he explained things, and he was just, well, irreplaceable.
Yeah, and also, if I count back, because he's won about 20 F1 World Championships, and he did a bit of a stint in British touring cars, and he won about 9 British touring car titles, because he did it from 1988 to 1997.
When it was on Grandstand. Yeah.
So I'm just going to call him the ultimate champion, because if he was a touring car driver and he was that good, he'd be the historicalest touring car driver ever.
I agree. I absolutely agree. And he did a lot of other things as well. He had a passion for motorcycle racing, which came from his youth and from his dad, essentially. He saw the Isle of Man TT as being the most amazing motorsport challenge on the planet, and had a real thirst for that. And I was lucky. I worked with him quite a lot. Certainly in the last sort of 10 or 15 years, I did quite a few interviews with Murray, and he was, firstly, the interviews that I did with him were mainly live ones, so in front of a live audience, and quite a few of them were with BMW down at Goodwood at the Festival of Speed, and you got the distinct impression when you were doing these interviews and before and after for the autograph session, just how huge a character he was. And I did once go on a little trip after we did the interview. I went on a buggy with him back to his hotel, taken back to his hotel. And it was so difficult to get through the crowd, to get to the exit of Goodwood, to get over to the hotel, because as we drove a buggy through, everyone wanted to stop and say hello to Murray. He was a legend. He was an amazing character and a thoroughly nice, kind, good, respectful man. He was lovely. He's the guy that everyone would want as their granddad.
Yeah, I remember him because I also heard about him because I watched the F1, but I also heard of him because I watched his documentary in 2011, Life in the Fast Lane.
Yes, yeah. He's the world is going to be a much sadder place without Murray. In fact, yesterday, the first day after he passed away, to sort of think about things and get your head around things, I did feel really sad. Probably a feeling that I last remember feeling after my parents passed away. Just this real sadness that I wasn't going to be able to see the person or hear the person again, and that's testimony really to how friendly his broadcasting style was, because we all felt that we knew him. We all felt that he was a friend to us, and the idea that we're not going to see that little cheeky smile again and a little wry comment about something that was going on, we're not going to see that. The only good thing is that we've got so many wonderful broadcast archives of him doing what he did, and interviews as well. He came on my radio show back in the first year that we did Tin Top Tuesday, back in 2005, and I dug out the audio from it yesterday and had a little listen to it. We phoned him up, and he was our phone a friend during a quiz section on the show, and amazing professional, just slotted into it, didn't really know the show, but just got a little brief from us before we rang him up, and he was just straight away did exactly what was required, and brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
And he was also friends with a certain Mr. Nigel Mansell.
Yes, he was. Yeah. And that chemistry, culminating really in that wonderful bit of footage where he says that Nigel's got a bump on his forehead. He goes to touch it, and actually does touch it, and clearly gives Nigel a great degree of pain. Is classic. Yeah, a fantastic memory. Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, he was also in. Nigel Mansell was also in a touring car race as well. He won one touring car race, and he crashed out in the other. He
did compete in touring cars. He competed in the Toker shootout at Donington Park, where he had a coming together with Tiffany Dell and had a big accident, made all the newspapers the following day because he was taken off to hospital. It was a big crash. And also competed in a Ford Mondeo as well a couple of years later, and that was immense to get the world champion as he was in 1992, and also the champion of Indy cars as well into a touring car, and to compete at in a completely different discipline. Had a cracking battle at Donington Park in the wet, a race that was eventually won by John Cleland. But the battle was supreme. I think it was John that said in the interview afterwards, I can't believe how well Nigel did, bearing in mind he doesn't really know a super touring car that well. And John, with all of his experience in super touring cars, a fantastic battle. I mean, ultimately he didn't win, but John Clellan won. But what a race! What excitement! Fantastic! I did the podium for that race. It was so exciting.
Yeah, one of my friends actually had the pleasure of interviewing on their Spinning Wheels podcast, Guy Smith and Paul Woodford.
Yes,
They had the pleasure of interviewing the double header. First of all, they had John Clellan, and the next one they had Steve Serper.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, brilliant. That's very good. Brilliant.
Because I've been looking through the archives of touring cars, and my favourite season was the 2001 title battle between Jason Plato and the certain Mr. Muller.
Was it? Yeah. I mean, great rivals over the years. You know, the rivalries that we've had in BTCC, but the when they actually get quite fraught, you know, it can't be that nice to be involved in the battle, but for us as spectators to watch on a battle like that evolving, absolutely fantastic, absolutely brilliant.
Were you there in Silverstone 1992 where the infamous collision happened?
No, no, I wasn't. And the weird thing was the first touring car race that I commentated on was in 1993. And so I did a few meetings in 1993, a few more in 1994. And then from 1998, I'd done, up until last year, I'd done every touring car meeting from 98 to last year. Last year, I was poorly and had to go into hospital, and I missed 2 rounds. I missed Alton Park and Knock Hill last year, and it was the most miserable thing to know that there was a touring car meeting going on, and for me not to be there. So no, 1992, I wasn't there.
Yeah, because one of my friends asked, because Paul O'Neill said you weren't feeling too well, and one of my friends said, hope he's feeling all right now.
Yeah, no, I'm absolutely fine now. It was a really weird one. It was a most peculiar thing because, well, 2020 was a difficult year for everybody, wasn't it? And we waited and we waited to get the season underway. And then as soon as the season got underway, it was after Donington Park and Brands Hatch. So after the first 2 meetings of the year, I was diagnosed with cancer. And it was, you know, a big shock. And I had to have an operation. And it was so frustrating because why couldn't I have been diagnosed with cancer while we were sitting around during lockdown waiting to get the season underway? So then when the season started, I could have just carried on. But no, we just got started. I did 2 meetings and then I had to have 2 meetings lying at home and recuperating. But I'm absolutely fine now. All sorted.
That's good. We're going to be chatting about your career today here on the Chatterbox podcast. 5 questions. 5 questions, is that all right?
5 questions is more than okay. Yeah.
5 questions. Happy. So are you ready to rumble in the jungle?
I'm ready to rumble. You go for it, Ben.
Let's go. Question 1. Where did you start your broadcast career?
So where did I start broadcasting? So back to the late 80s. So in the late 80s, I was working as working for myself, but as a music producer. So I was a bit of a, not a very good one, but a musician that could write jingles and advert music and video music and that kind of thing. So I was producing music in my own studio, home studio. And I ended up working for a radio station in Victor FM which was down in Kent. I was working for one DJ writing jingles, a huge amount of jingles for his radio show. It's where I met probably my oldest friend, Ian Collins, because we were both working on the same show. Ian now works on talk radio and has had a great broadcasting career. But I was writing the jingles, made friends with Ian, who I'd stayed friends with throughout my career. And while I was writing jingles for the radio station, I was also coming on air occasionally and presenting road shows for the radio station, and generally involved in broadcasting, but not specifically. And specifically, I started sort of thinking that maybe music was not the area that I wanted to stay in, and maybe radio was something that I really wanted to focus on. And it happened in a really unplanned way, in that in 1993, so I'd been doing jingles for a radio station, been doing that kind of stuff, but was looking for the next thing to do afterwards that would be involved with radio. And I made friends at school in the sixth form, made friends with my English teacher, a guy called Tony Coles, who raced a car, a Mallock, in clubman's racing and club level racing, but also he being an English teacher, he was really good at words. So he used to commentate on sort of club meetings up and down the country as well. And we'd made friends at school, stayed friends after I left school. And I was still going to race meetings with Tony before the days of having a timing screen, TSL timing screen in the commentary box. I used to do a lap chart for him. And there was a meeting at Thruxton in 1993 where the chap who was due, I can't remember the chap's name, but it was the guy that was meant to do the interviews on the podium after each race. He had a car crash, I think. He wasn't hurt, but he couldn't get to the circuit. Or the car broke down, I can't really remember. But for whatever reason, he wasn't able to make it to do the podium interviews. And I spoke to Tony, I said, I could probably do podium interviews. I know how to talk on a mic, and I know a bit about racing. Not very much, but I reckon I could stand in. So in a roundabout way, Dennis Carter, the guy that was in charge of Thruxton at the time, the chief executive of Thruxton, had my name suggested, and I got the job. And I got invited back later in the year at Thruxton to do the support races for the BTCC. So from then on, it kind of took off. I hadn't planned it to work that way, but it was fantastic. And the minute I started to do interviewing, I realized that was probably something that I wanted to carry on doing. I loved it. It was where I wanted to be.
Yeah, and also did you do the commentary as well?
So the commentary, I started commentating the following year, had my first go at race commentary the following year, which was, I'll never forget it. It's the 2nd of May, 1994. Again, it was at Thruxton. I was in the second box at a club meeting. Tony Coles, my English teacher, my friend, was in the main box. And I was scheduled to do my first sort of race commentary, if you like. And it was the day after Ayrton Senna died, and the day after my birthday. So a weekend I will never forget. That weekend was a horrible weekend. And this race meeting was on the bank holiday Monday. So May bank holiday, May the 2nd. And so the first thing that I was ever part of in a race commentary was Tony saying, "Welcome to all the spectators." And I'll never forget the phrase he used. He didn't say, we need to have a minute's silence for the events of Imola over the weekend. But he said, he talked about what had happened over the weekend. And he said, maybe this is a good opportunity for us all just for a few moments to collect our thoughts. And I thought it was beautifully put, rather than a sort of a formal minute silence or anything like that. But that was my first meeting in a commentary box. I don't like race commentary as much as I like doing interviews. I'll do it. I'm quite happy to do it. I still do Macau every year. I go out to Macau and do Macau with Jonathan Green, another friend of mine. But my real passion in broadcasting is really talking to other people, because they know more than me. So I quite like to try and get that information out of them rather than me saying the information that I've got in my head, because I don't know as much as the people that are actually doing it. So that's the real thing that I love. So 1994, May the 2nd, that was my first commentary box commentary.
Yeah. Jonathan Green, I think, was it, from who does the world feed for the World Superbikes, is it?
I think he's done everything. Johnny's based, he's a Brit, but he's based over in America, in the US, and he's all over the world. Maybe not so much at the moment because of COVID, but in normal circumstances, yeah, he's all over the place. He can turn his hand to any motor racing, can Johnny?
Yeah, that's good. One of my favourite moments in the BTCC, one of my favourite tracks in the BTCC is Thruxton, actually.
Yeah, because it's so fast, because it's such a challenge.
Yeah, and I'm not really a big fan of Alton Park, if I'm honest, due to the lack of overtaking.
Right. Yeah, no, I get that. Yeah, Thruxton is unique. So I guess it's a bit like Marmite for some drivers. Some drivers don't like it because it is so fast, and some drivers absolutely adore it because it is so fast. So potentially they might be the drivers that love the picturesque Alton Park and the ups and downs and the challenging corners at Alton Park. That they are two vastly different circuits, aren't they?
Yeah, and also there's a lot of drivers, and I remember because I was disappointed a bit with the calendar last year due to COVID, because you didn't go to the Silverstone International track.
Yeah, I know, that was going to be such fun, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was going to be such fun because you were using the new pit lane, not the bog standard one.
Exactly, and I think we were all looking forward to it. And in the end, all we got was the media day, the press day, when we had the test, and then bang, the country came to a halt, and we never got to do it. So it was a shame, but that's not to say that we won't get the opportunity again sometime in the future. I think all the drivers really like the idea of a new circuit and a new challenge on the calendar. This year is going to be a new challenge in its own right, because we're going to circuits in a different order. So we're going to be going to circuits at a different time of year. So there'll be all sorts of different challenges. For example, we're going to Snetterton much earlier in the year. Normally it's at the height of summer. It's in August. It's normally really quite a warm meeting. And it normally takes place after the Goodyear tyre test. So they've had quite a lot of information around the circuit. This year, we go before the official test, and we go when it's much cooler and potentially a bit damper as well. So there are different challenges for the drivers this year. Not a new circuit, but certainly different conditions.
Yeah, and there's a lot of new drivers, a lot of old drivers, a lot of returning drivers.
It's amazing, isn't it? What's your most exciting change for this year?
I think some of the new drivers, I think they're going to find it a bit difficult with these old guns like your Jason Platers, your Matt Neals. They're going to give.
Well, there's the story. Jason Plato's coming back. Goodness me.
He's got Dan Lloyd as a teammate, which I'd have personally gone for Dan Camish, but.
Well, Dan Camish is going to be entertaining us in Carrera Cup this year, which is amazing, because Harry King last year as the Porsche Junior, the Porsche Scholar, And that's a pretty heavy shootout to win that Harry won, not last year, but the end of the year before. And then in his first year as a scholar, he took the title in incredibly dominant style last year. And then to be pitched head to head this year against Dan Camish, who now has multiple years of touring car experience, but also was champion and a dominant champion when he was in Carrera Cup. That is a mouth-watering prospect, the two of them together. Absolutely brilliant.
Do you still commentate with Titch is his name?
No. So so Titch was in my left ear for, goodness me, umpteen years. I think from 2000 until probably 2015. Titch and I were the two commentators at the circuit for the BTCC. And much as we were talking about Murray being the voice of motorsport when we were young, Titch was, as far as when I was at a circuit at Silverstone for the Formula One Grand Prix. If I was lucky enough to have tickets to be at the Grand Prix, I'd be sitting on the bank, and as a young man, I'd be listening to Titch. And then to work with him for 14, 15 years on the BTCC, I got to know Titch really well. We are two vastly different people. He came from the world of law. I came from the world of the music business and the recording industry. We couldn't be more different if we tried, but we became jolly good friends and great colleagues as well. They say opposites attract. I spoke to Titch a few weeks ago on the phone. We stay in touch. Basically, what happened to Titch was the incessant travelling of the BTCC. He's got a busy life anyway. He's very much involved with Silverstone and the BRDC. And he just had too much in his life to be able to do the amount of traveling which is involved with the BTCC, which is understandable. But I can't say I didn't shed a tear when he told me that. I can tell you where it was as well. It was in the Pizza Express in Orpington on a Brantatch touring car weekend when he told me that he wasn't going to be doing the following year, and I was really upset. It was a great shame. We were a partnership, and I miss him, but he's still commentating. He's doing British GT and all sorts of other historic meetings as well. He's still around and he's in good health and good form.
I like one of my favourite commentary lineups in the BTCC is Tim and David.
They're very good, aren't they? Eh? They are very good. Well, David had started commentating just a couple of years before me. And he was fantastic because he was a young man, 18 years old. And he was able to, his knowledge is vast, absolutely vast. And his delivery and his humor and everything about him, absolutely brilliant. And his forte is talking about a race, making a race exciting like Murray did, but making a race exciting and being entertaining and informative as well. And Tim is one of the few drivers who has properly made the transition between from being a sportsman to being a presenter stroke commentator as well. He does his homework. He does a lot of research. He does a lot of work behind the scenes, and it shows. When you put him on air, he's done his work. He's talked to people in the paddock. He's talked to engineers. He's talked to team owners. He's talked to drivers. And if you marry that together with his knowledge of being a former touring car champion himself back in 1992, then you've got all the ingredients to be a great commentator. So the two of them, they've just come together and they work brilliantly.
Yeah, and there's because David Addison also does the British GT commentary for television. He
does, yeah.
And F3, but he shares that role, I think, sometimes with a certain Martin Haven.
Yes, yeah. These are these are both chaps that I've worked with over the years. I've worked with Martin on Radio Le Mans quite a few times, and he's another really good guy. He's also another really versatile guy because, you know, on Eurosport, he's over the years been able to turn his hand to talking about bobsleigh racing, and I don't even know what it's properly called, but he can turn his hand to just about any adrenaline sport, and does it with a very entertaining style. He's another good guy, really good guy.
Yeah, brilliant. Question 2: who were your inspirations in broadcasting growing up?
So, early on in my involvement with motor racing, I guess anyone would be inspired by Murray, because Murray was so friendly and so welcoming and so respectful of the talent that racing drivers have got, and I can only try and emulate that kind of friendliness and welcome feeling that he gives people. As he said to me once, Alan, I am welcomed into people's living rooms every Sunday afternoon. I have to be respectful of that and be grateful for it. And that came over. That was Murray's style. But before that, when I was a real youngster, and I think I knew that I wanted to be involved in racing, in broadcasting rather, and I think I knew that I wanted to be involved in radio. And I think my inspiration there was somebody that also, in fact, crossed over into motor racing. He was involved in motor racing, not least through one of his co-presenters on TV, Mike Smith, who was a driver in the BTCC, but also his co-host on Saturday Night TV. And that was Noel Edmonds. As a kid, watching Multicolored Swap Shop and then, you know, later the Late Breakfast Show, Noel Edmonds was a consummate genius on air. And again, because he was so natural and so friendly, everything about his broadcasting style I found you know, inspirational really as a kid. And I used to be watching TV and thinking, yeah, I think I could have done that, or no, I couldn't have done that. He did that brilliantly, you know, and you know, doing interviews, watching him doing interviews. So even back when I was a kid, I was watching TV presenters with a view to, I'd quite like to be doing this one day. I wonder if I ever will. So Noel Edmonds, definitely, and for sure, Murray Walker.
Noel Edmonds actually had something to do with Formula One, I think.
I've lost you. Hang on. Why can't I hear you? Hang on. I can hear you again.
Noel Edmonds actually, I think I saw something online where Noel Edmonds actually did something for Formula One.
Yeah. And he's in recent years, I think he did some broadcasting from Monaco. He's a great fan. There was talk for a few years that he potentially wanted to have a touring car team. Ultimately, he also there was talk about him competing at Le Mans. I've got a vague memory because Radio 1, when he was a Radio 1 DJ back in the 1970s, they used to have Radio 1 sponsored days at Brands Hatch. I'm pretty sure that he raced then, and for some reason I've got in my mind that he raced in a Ford Capri, but I don't know. I would have to look that up, but he's got a passion for motorsport.
Yeah, and also there was another guy who loves his racing cars. Oh, I forgot his name. Sorry. Yeah, there was someone off the top of my head. I can't remember his name, but it was, of course, Chris Evans. I don't know if you ever met him.
Yeah. Chris Evans loves his motor racing. No, I've never met Chris Evans, but yeah, another great petrol head. He's got a nice car collection as well, or he did have. I don't know if he's still got it.
Good friends. He's good friends with a touring car racer,
Jason Plato.
who's also good friends with Paul Hollywood as well.
Yes, he is. Yes, indeed. Who has come along to touring car meetings, and I've had a chance to have a chat. Mesmerizing eyes. When you interview him, his eyes draw you in. What a, if ever there was someone that was designed to be on TV, it's Paul Hollywood. Goodness me.
Yeah, because I remember in 2012 at the Brands Hatch season finale when Jason Plato was driving the MG, it wasn't very good in the wet that year.
Right. Yeah.
Question 3. What is your favourite part about the job?
Favorite part about the job is the challenge of very quickly making friends with someone that you might not necessarily have ever met before, and then so it might be that your first encounter with that person is actually interviewing them, which is a really unnatural thing to do, to meet someone and then to immediately start firing questions at them is quite an invasive thing to do. And it's not, it's not the natural order of life. But if you are an interviewer, then you have to do that really quite quickly and to make some kind of bond with that person instantly. So you become friends with them and you draw them in to have a conversation, to be natural and to have a conversation. That I find is the big challenge. When I, for many years, I used to do for Silverstone TV. I used to for the British Grand Prix every year. So it was with a television crew. It's quite stressful because although quite a few of the Formula One drivers you've known when they were coming up through racing. So, for example, with Jenson Button, I've been interviewing him when he was doing Formula Ford and then British Formula 3 and then into Formula One. So that was a slightly more easy conversation to have. But some of the drivers that had cut their teeth on racing in other parts of the world, I've never met before. And you've got maximum 90 seconds to get in the important questions before they move on to speak to someone else. So you've got to kind of make this connection with them really quickly and hopefully, make friends with them as well in that period of time to get the best out of them, rather than just the same old answers that they give, the stock answers that come out one after another to all the broadcasters. So that's a challenge that I really enjoy, getting to know people and getting to know them quickly. And then, so the flip side of that is then when you do make friends with them, enough to do nice interviews, it's a really cool thing to then actually become friends with them. And, over the years, I've become friends with quite a few of the drivers that I've got to know in the BTCC. Matt Neal was the first guy that I became sort of quite friendly with in the paddock. He was really kind to me and he helped me very much when I started. In latter years, I'm very friendly now with Tom Ingram. He's a really good guy, and we chat away from race meetings, and we don't necessarily always chat about racing either. So to make that step is a really rewarding thing to do, and I think that so it's a personal basis, really. It's getting to know people, I suppose, if I was to sum it up as the nicest thing about the job. The other thing, of course, is the adrenaline rush before you broadcast. So before you go on air, before you walk on stage, it's still a buzz for me. It's I don't really get a buzz out of recorded broadcasting. I don't like it. So it's why Autoglimt in Top Tuesday is always a live show. And when the podcast appears, it's absolutely as it appeared when it went out live, because I get a buzz out of that live broadcasting. Anything could happen, anyone could say anything, and it's your challenge to control it. And maybe that goes back to the days when I used to watch Noel Edmonds on TV. I found it a thrill to watch live television and watch how it was going to unfold. So yeah, two things: making friends with people and the thrill of live broadcasting. I just love live broadcasting.
The friend who I mentioned earlier is a radio broadcaster himself in this local area. And also, he was going to go to Donington Park last year. He had the tickets all booked, and 3 days before he found out that they weren't having fans.
Oh, that's so sad. It was difficult last year. Not having spectators last year was really difficult. I'll never forget the feeling. Ash Sutton has just won his second title in the BTCC. A massive, massive thing to have done. And he came back into Parc Fermé. I was there waiting for him. And it was pretty quiet, and that's unheard of. Normally you can hear the crowd over the other side on the bank at Colin Chapman Way. You can hear them around Clearways. You can see all the teams that have assembled down in Parc Fermé. And last year it was close to silent, and it was, I'll never forget it. But I felt I even thought, if I wasn't holding a microphone, I'd clap just to kind of help things along. But that kind of typified the year, really. It was so difficult. Everyone was brilliant. They put on a great show for the TV, but it's nothing like having spectators there.
I actually felt a bit sorry for ITV, if I'm honest with you. But at the end of the season, Louise Goodman did get a chance to go down to the grid, I think.
She did. She came out for the last meeting, didn't she? It was really difficult because they had to stay in their own bubble. It was really, really important. ITV, big company, and they have important protocols in place for things like that, and that was absolutely what they had to do, and they did it remarkably well. The coverage, bearing in mind they were just staying in a broadcasting encampment, was superb last year. What they did was fantastic, but really difficult. Even people like David, I was talking to David as the year went on, and he's used to doing a race and then chatting to the drivers to get the inside story before he went and commentated on the next race. And that was something that he couldn't do last year. And that was a big bind, big change in the way he operates and has always operated. So it was a challenge for everyone, but without them, no one would have seen the brilliant season that we had last year. So it was quite fantastic what was achieved despite everything.
Yeah, you were missing a few legendary drivers last year, like Jason and who else? Jordan.
Well, it was exciting. Yeah, Andrew Jordan. And then we were also about to welcome back Matt Jackson, who is possibly the most likely driver to have been a champion who has not been a champion, because Matt Jackson is a hugely talented and respected part of the grid. And he would still be doing it now. If he was in a drive, he would still be winning races in his trademark style. So there were Andy Jordan. That was a big shame. Jason, likewise, big shame. And I would also include there Matt Jackson as well. Very sad not to see him on the grid last year, despite the fact that he was slated to have been Jason's teammate last year.
It would have been a great season if Curvy hadn't got it. It would have been a great season with them legends on the grid. COVID
is responsible for so many difficulties and sadnesses last year and this year as well. The truth of the matter is that we are where are we? We're in March. We're halfway through March, and you know, the amount of jobs that I've done out of the house this year, very few, very, very few, you know, because I'm involved in the live event business, and live events just, you know, they're not taking place at the moment. It's a very, very strange thing. We're all going to come out of this with a lot more knowledge about a lot of things, and an experience that hopefully none of us in our lifetime will ever have to repeat, because it hasn't been fun, you know, and it's been devastating loss for so many people. But my you know, my experience with COVID was this time last year, when all of a sudden we were told that we had to stay at home and work from home. You know, I did instantly think, what am I going to do? You know, that I work in live events. Without live events, I'm not going to have any work.
Well, we'll come on to that question now, actually. How has COVID affected your life and line of work?
Well, it was exactly that time, this time last year, March last year, that I had to think, what am I going to do? Because I'm involved in live events. All the jobs that I had in the diary, I had a full diary for last year, and all of a sudden, you know, before you know it, you've lost those jobs. They're not there anymore. So I did think outside the box. Autoglim, my sponsors of the radio show, Tin Top Tuesday, were fantastic. They said, no, even if we're not racing, carry on doing the show. We're quite happy for you to carry on doing the show. So that was, you know, all of a sudden I did have something to focus on, and fans of the BTCC had something that resembled normality to look forward to on Tuesdays during the year. But I just started to think, okay, well, you know, I'm an engineer, I'm a producer. I would normally go out and record podcasts and video interviews with various guests for various publications during the year. So we'll have to work out a way of doing these interviews and making them interesting, you know, online. So pretty much what we're doing now, Zoom calls and editing those to become an interesting podcast from home. I must confess that it doesn't float my artistic boat quite as much. You know, you're not setting up shots, you're not getting nice lighting, you're not getting good sound, all of the things that I quite enjoy about live filming and live recording. I'm not traveling around. I'm, you know, not traveling. For many years, I've done quite a few race meetings in Europe, DTM, Le Mans, Nürburgring 24-hour race. That they've all gone. So you have to work out another way of doing them, and you know, another way of working. So remote work, I did Macau commentary last year remotely. So looking at the streets of Macau that I know so well and, you know, enjoy being at, you're doing it from a satellite truck set in a field in Surrey, instead of actually being there in the lovely November, December heat of Macau. It was a different way of working. So yeah, just everything remotely, whatever it is, do it remotely. And hopefully the idea of traveling and actually going out will return before too long, because I much prefer it. I much prefer it.
Coming back on to Murray Walker, he actually, because he used to do some of the races, as Martin Brundle said in his piece last night from Television Centre, but he used to make fans feel like he was at the circuit.
I know. It's quite a thing to be able to do that. It is quite a thing. In fact, I think Murray tells a story in his book about James Hunt, and I think James Hunt said something that that rather broke the spell of where they were talking about the race that they were talking about. I think it was the South African Grand Prix of Kyalami, and James Hunt. So Murray had created the illusion. I think that's the story. Murray had created the illusion that they were there and they weren't. And then James, in one sentence, was able to destroy the myth. But yeah, and it's not easy to do, you know, to pretend to be somewhere and to not actually be on site is difficult when you're used to being there. So it's not easy. It's not as much fun either, because going to different parts of the world and different parts of the country is one of the thrills about, you know, doing this job. It's an amazing thing. I've been to parts of the world that I never thought were that I would possibly visit in my life. I went to New Zealand with A1GP. Went to Singapore with Formula One and Formula BMW, and places that I, you know, adored going to, that I never thought I'd go to, but I was there. So I do hope it comes back, you know, because that's part of the job that I love.
It will. Not long now.
Good. Fingers crossed. Well, I've had my jab now, so I'm halfway there. I've had the jab.
Oxford.
Yeah, Oxford. Yeah. Did you feel all right afterwards?
I ain't had it yet.
You've not had it yet, right? Okay, right. Yeah. So I had Oxford yesterday. Felt a little bit groggy last night. Felt like I was sort of coming down with a cold, but I didn't feel like I was having a cold. I felt the same today, but it's gradually easing off. So no particular ill effects, and crack on, everyone. Get out there and get it done.
Because if Murray still had the stamina and he was alive, you'd have to he'd request to go to the racetrack.
Oh, absolutely. He had such a massive passion for what he was talking about. He absolutely loved it. He loved it. His knowledge, everything about it. And I have to say, he was also, you know, he could be quite mischievous. I did a couple of interviews with him where he knew something, and he put me on the spot and said, "Okay, Alan, so who was it that won the such and such Grand Prix?" I had no idea. I didn't know, but it was, and he could see from my face that, "Oh, I don't know the answer to this. Help me out, please." So he had a mischievous side as well.
Did you ever see him at work when he was in the com box?
So he commentated with me, and it was a great memory. So it was DTM at Brands Hatch, and I was commentating for a hospitality unit for one of the manufacturers, and they said, okay, there were guests from Germany, guests from the UK, guests from everywhere, and it was my job as a presenter and an interviewer that weekend to chat to people. But also they said, when the race is happening, can you provide an English language commentary for everybody in the hospitality building? So I said, yeah, okay, yeah, that was okay. So I sat down in front of the big TV that was in hospitality, and so I was in the zone. I was just staring at the TV and staring at my notes and commentating away. And when you're in that zone, you tend not to get distracted or want to be distracted. You don't notice things that are going on. But I did notice that somebody had come down and sat next to me. I could see it in my peripheral vision that somebody had sat down next to me. And I thought, well, that's really weird. I'm on quite a small table on my own. It's obvious what I'm doing. And then at some point I was able to look to one side and see that it was Murray that sat down next to me. So I thought, well, I'm not going to lose this opportunity, am I? But Murray Walker is sat next to me. I'm going to include him in the commentary. So, and I did, and he was happy to do it. He wouldn't have sat down had he not been. So it was amazing. So I'm very, very proud that it only happened once, but at least it happened once that I was able to commentate alongside Murray Walker. Wasn't on TV, wasn't on a global broadcast, but he had a twinkle in his eye, and it gave me one as well. It was fantastic.
I still personally think he deserves a knighthood, if I'm honest.
Oh, I know. He's an OBE, of which he was incredibly proud. And he was also very proud of being a member of the BRDC. And I'll tell you what, there was something else as well. And it was in the middle of 2019. And he was incredibly proud of this. The Royal Automobile Club in Pall Mall, they had a refit to their television room, and they named it the Murray Walker Television Room. He was incredibly proud of that. In July, he came up for the opening of it. There was some amazing guests that were on including Alan Gow, in fact, the championship chief executive of the BTCC. So loads of great characters were there for the opening. We did an interview with him, which is available on YouTube to watch. I watched it back yesterday. About a half an hour interview with Murray, and he was incredibly proud. And so he has donated into the television room some of the great artifacts that he's collected over the years. So there's a part of a Jaguar Formula One car in the television room, and it is the Murray Walker Television Room at the Royal Automobile Club, and it will be the Murray Walker Television Room forever, which is fantastic.
Yeah, because he's such a legend that he worked with Jonathan Palmer, Martin Brundle, Sean Hollenby, in fact.
Yeah, Sean was a director. Sean was a TV director back in the day. Yeah.
And now he's in charge of MB Motorsport, owned by another Formula One ex-racing driver, Mark Blundell.
And of course, they are Motorbase Performance now, a team that was built up by David Bartram and now running 4 Ford Focus for MB and under the Motorsport, under the Motorbase banner as well this year. So, the name of Motorbase lives on with Sean Hollenby.
Great person. He drive for a bit in the Volkswagen. Yeah.
I went to school with him. I was at junior school. We were in the same year at junior school. We didn't know each other, but we were at the same junior school, Crofton Junior School in Orpington in Kent, South London. And we've only discovered since Sean was involved in the BTCC that we are the same age. We were in at the same school, and we were in the same year at junior school, which is an amazing small world.
Yeah, because there's a lot of good drivers out there as well, because I remember a lot of racing drivers, you see, because I've talked to a couple as well. And I've never actually spoke to Ash Sutton before, but I think he's the Lewis Hamilton of the Touring Car Championship.
He is amazing. He was amazing from the moment he got in a touring car. It was press day in the first year of his touring cars in the MG in nasty weather. He didn't fit in the car. He hadn't had a proper seat fit. He couldn't see the apex of the corners, but still, for the majority of the afternoon, his first ever event with the BTCC, and he spent most of the afternoon on top of the times. And you just knew that this is a proper star, and he wants to. I heard an interview or read an interview or something with him over the winter, saying that it's his challenge. Or he has challenged himself. He wants to win more touring car titles than anyone else. Well, he's on the way. He hasn't been in touring cars for very long, and he's already won 2. So, he's a star, an absolute star. We're lucky to have him.
He's the Lewis Hamilton of British touring cars.
Yeah. Well, potentially, Lewis is going to be have the most world titles of anyone after this year. We'll wait and see. Let's not predict it too early. But Ash has got exactly the same desire with the BTCC. He wants to win more titles. Colin could do it this year. He could. He's equaled Andy Rouse 4 titles. He could go and get 5 titles this year. Colin Turkington. So, Ash might have a bigger number to achieve ultimately.
His fourth title was the hardest, Colin Turkington. His last title in 2019, because he had competition from his own teammate and Dan Camish as well.
He did. Yeah, it was a great year there, wasn't it? It was a mega year, and it meant the world to Colin.
At the end, I felt a bit sorry for Dan, at the
Yeah,
end.
I think the whole touring car world felt a bit sorry for Dan. I mean, they really did.
Did you interview him afterwards or not?
I didn't interview him until the Tuesday after. I interviewed him on Autoglim Tin Top Tuesday, the following Tuesday, but no, that day, no, because at the end of that race, it was all about the champion, you know, and I wouldn't have wanted to interview Dan, you know. I remember asking him the Tuesday after, you know, about how long it took him to sort of get over it, and he wasn't over it. He wasn't over it come the interview at Autosport International, come the following January. He'll probably never be over that because he was within laps of claiming a title in the BTCC, arguably the most competitive touring car championship on the planet. And he was, you know, just moments away. And then through no fault of his own, he can do it.
Yeah, that's it. Question 5. What advice would you give to young aspiring broadcasters?
Which is a really good question, and it relates to I guess the most important thing is really relates to something that my father told me, and I have subsequently found out over the last weekend reading stuff that Murray Walker had said in his life, something that Murray told people as well when they asked for advice for a young broadcaster. I remember it from my dad, and my dad said, never upset anyone on the way up because you'll meet them again on the way down. And it is applicable to broadcasting. It's applicable to any job in life. Just be nice to people. It's not that difficult. You might not necessarily agree with the person that they are or who they are. Any one of a number of things might make you very different people, but you can still be polite and you can still be nice and you can still be respectful. And that's very important. And maybe, you know, when you're young and you're trying to get on in a broadcasting career, and you're young and you might think that somebody has been rude to you, but treat them with respect and you know, don't sink to their level, if you like, because those people with experience are people that you can use rather than disregard, because they've got experience. They can help you. So if you are respectful and you're kind and you're nice to them, then they'll be able to help you probably more than they'll be able to hinder you. So I think that's probably the most important thing. And to do your homework, certainly in my line of work, it's for a touring car weekend, it's a day's work of prep, you know, to make sure that I've got all the stats and all of the information that I need ahead of a race weekend. That's really important. You should never broadcast. For the amount of time you spend broadcasting, you should have at least spent that amount of time preparing. So, you know, for a day's broadcast, you do a day's prep. It's as simple as that. There is no excuse to go on air and not to have been prepared. Even, you know, for a chat like us today, before we had a chat, I was thinking about maybe a few of the things that we might be having a talk about. I just jotted down a few little notes that I might jog my memory with to make sure that I remember to mention them, because, you know, every broadcast is as important as another. And it's important. You always do your homework. You always do your prep. There you go. They are my two little nuggets of advice.
Yeah,
be nice to people and do your own work.
Yeah, also Mr. Murray Walker was Mr. Formula One, Mr. Touring Cars.
But he did the work. He put the groundwork in. You know, he did his research. He knew about stuff. He talked to people. He found out about what happened when this car was designed, when the engine was first run. He knew all of that stuff, and so he could just trip it out during a commentary. And people would think, wow, he knows a lot. He didn't know a lot, but he went out and did his homework, because that's what you have to do. You know, it's important. Really
I
important.
also forgot to add into the thing the statistics of Mr. Murray Walker. He also won a couple of Isle of Man TTs as well.
Is that right? I didn't know that. I did.
That's in his commentary titles.
Oh, right. Yeah. Understood. It was his favourite race. And there was the video, wasn't there, just a few years ago of the Isle of Man TT. And I think he did compete at the TT. I'm pretty sure he did. Maybe I should have done my homework about that to find out. But I'm certain that in an interview with Murray Walker, or maybe it was his father. I don't know. We'll have to look that one up. We'll have to work that one out. Yeah.
His box, as Martin Brundle said yesterday in an interview with Ted Kravitz, Murray Walker was box office every time he steps out the TV compound.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely, he was. Yeah. He was a massive star, but he also gave another great bit of advice. And that, so when you become that popular, and you know that everywhere you go, people want your autograph, they want to talk to you, and he did. He had time for fans. I never saw him rude to anybody. He was always welcoming and friendly and kind, and was always chat to people. But he also said, you have to remember, you are never bigger than the sport. And it's a really good bit of advice, you know, as egos get bigger, as you get more and more famous, well-known, respected, whatever, if you're talking or presenting about a sport, that's okay, that's great, it's brilliant, but you're not bigger than the sport, because tomorrow and the week after, if you're not there, it will still be going.
Yeah. And when you're at Snetterton next, just go down to Murray's Corner.
Yeah, I was thinking that yesterday.
And just stand there for a second and just acknowledge it.
I agree. I think a lot of people will as well. Isn't that lovely that we've got these lasting memories of Murray? We've got this wonderful television room at the Wild Automobile Club. We've got the corner at Snetterton. We've got so many places that will make sure that we never forget him, because he was an amazing character. Amazing. I'll miss him terribly.
That's it for today. Thank you for joining me, Alan, here on the Chatterbox podcast.
You're welcome, Ben.
Join me again soon when I'll have broadcaster Neil Fox, but for now, please give it up for that legendary Alan Hyde. Thank you so much for watching, listening, and that's a wrap.
Hope you enjoyed that interview with the legendary Alan Hyde. More coming soon. So subscribe. If you want more, subscribe and hit that like button or dislike button or comment. Thank you. Enjoy the video and I'll see you next time. BL out, and that's a wrap.